which were in the meeting packets. Any revisions or updates to the minutes necessary? Go ahead, Deb. There you go.
I had discussed as part of the finance about the issues of the taking off the garbage cart and recycling. And I guess the most important part of it was I'm one of 4 women in my area with single-family homes that are very stingy and have very little to put out as trash. In fact, I didn't even put anything out this week. It wasn't worth it. So I do think the financial impact is just because you want to take it off, and we'll discuss it at the city council as such, shouldn't we have the opportunity, if 4 of us want to get 1 cart, then you're going to lose revenue on 3 different other households. And I think that needs to be discussed more thoroughly, and that there is a financial impact.
Is that a correction to the minutes, though? Are the minutes wrong in what you said?
That was not included.
Okay.
And I did say that.
Okay.
So,
So do you want the minutes revised to add more detail?
yes,
Okay.
because there is a financial impact. It's just not a plain wash.
Right. Well, and I think we should recognize that any change to the garbage plan as far as what containers there are and who gets what happens in public health and safety, and only the money part of the contract happens here.
Okay.
So if we, as that contract comes up ever again, we want to make some kind of adjustment, we make it there. So, but if you want the minutes revised to include a little more detail on that conversation, we could hold off the approval of these till our next meeting and bring them back with a little more detail, if that would work.
Sure,
Okay.
because if there are families that do decide between a number of households to piggyback and only get 1 container they're going to share,
Sure.
there will be an adjustment in revenue being
Right.
lost.
Well, we'll ask Leslie to have Mary go back and watch the tape and figure out exactly what you said and add a little more.
Okay,
So
that's
we'll
fine.
hold off then on approving the minutes then, if that's okay with everyone? Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
So we'll have that next time, thanks. So item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding the status of COVID loan and ground lease deferments. Mary Ann?
Sure, so council, of course, we've never been through a COVID pandemic before. The Community Development Department had brought forward the deferment of certain loans, as well as the option to defer ground leases, and the city really only has 2 ground leases today. And with the mortgages, you extended those deferments through June this year. And with the mortgages, of course, people pay interest, so there's some motivation to get back into a repayment schedule. And, we did not really establish any specific language with council of how that would actually occur. Like, would people need to make double mortgage payments till they were caught up? I believe we assumed through the silence that it would basically extend the amortization schedule. So if the amortization schedule was 36 months and there was a 6-month deferral, it will just add 6 months
So
towards
42
the end.
months or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
And that there would be most likely a small balloon payment still due because interest was accumulating during that deferment period. With the leases, it's a little bit different because there's not an interest component to the leases. And as you can see by my memo, people, both Bricks and WOW have taken advantage of the deferment. And so the question came up, well, how will we expect them to get caught up on those leases? Because, I think there is going to be a slow recovery. And so how do we manage that? I've done just some searching online, and communities were saying, they were giving 6 to 8 months to get caught up on leases. Some communities were providing a small discount with each lease payment that they got caught up on. So really, I guess this was just something that I thought both finance and council would want to consider, that we had not really delved into before. And, you know, at the time, we didn't even know how
wonder
long
if,
the deferrals were
You know,
going to
one thing
last.
we should look at too as part of the deferral and the catch-up is a period of time with which each of them were physically closed and unable to operate. They had no revenue, we had no revenue. And so, you know, I guess I would be interested as a committee member in knowing how many months of zero revenue both of those businesses experienced. And then, you know, we need to take that into consideration because, you know, neither of us derived any benefit from all of that existing during this, especially during the safe-at-home order. You know, and so would there be the option, in addition to an extension, to perhaps waive off a month or two of that while they were physically closed? You know, so I think that's something we should definitely look at, you know, in terms of, you know, helping businesses recover as well, because they all are struggling. And our loss for stuff like that should be things that we can recover under the rescue plan funding. Is
Right.
that right? So
Yes.
I think that, you know, that's one way we could help businesses out. Sarah?
For bricks, how many months during that unpaid month time would they have been closed normally? Because it looks like it went from like June to May.
You know, they certainly can be open all year if they so choose. I think, you know, they do have some facilities that they keep open all year. This facility, they, you know, they're, I guess, I don't want to speak for them, but it seems like they prefer to have drive-up access, and because this one doesn't, they, you know, this was one of the later ones to open this spring too. So I'm not quite, it's hard for me to answer.
Okay.
But we, you know, we could certainly, I could certainly reach out
I
to
think
both of
it's-
them and ask them to propose a repayment schedule and to kind of provide a narrative on what their hardship has been.
Well, that's the thing, and our goal really, I think, should be to not make their life any more difficult because they create a vibrancy within our riverfront, both of them, that is, you know, I mean, the first two businesses down there to take flight. I think it behooves us to consider what they've already gone through. So I guess I wouldn't be comfortable making a decision on it tonight because I guess we need to know a little more from them as far as what that all looks
Okay.
like. But if we could maybe hold that off for our next meeting and then
Sure.
reach out to them
Okay,
and see, you know, where they're at, because some additional repayment time is absolutely necessary, but if no one derived any benefit from it at all for a period of, you know, even 3 to 6 months. Now, normally, they're closed all winter, most of the time. The busiest location, even the one with drive-up, is closed for the entire month of January and about half of February.
Oh,
So usually like 6 weeks in there, it's closed, but most of the year, that one's open.
Okay.
So, but it would be good to ask them. Deb?
Thank you, Lisa. I guess it's especially, my concerns are with bricks because they did not open last summer, and we could, if we had known in enough time, we could have planned on potentially another vendor. And so I guess I was wondering, Ann, is there something in the contract that does allow, if they don't plan on opening, that the city could look at another vendor? Because it's a $1 million building we paid for, and I know that they're open over by Merrill Avenue.
No, the contract is with bricks, and so there's nothing in there that says if you don't open, our remedy will be that we'll bring another vendor in to use your space, because we count on them to provide maintenance and other things there, so we're not gonna let somebody else come in under their lease. But it does require that they open, I believe, May 1st to November 1st or something like that. There are specific dates in there. So if they didn't open, I guess we would treat that as a breach, reach out to them and say, why are you not open? And we could go from there. But there's no language in the contract currently that says if you aren't open these dates, we're gonna bring another vendor in.
I had thought that they did not open last year and decided to spend their time at other locations.
I don't honestly remember.
That
Is
is
that
correct.
true? Okay.
Because Mary Ann mentioned something about it.
Right.
So they're already in breach.
Right. Well, we had the safer at home order. And then we had a period of time during which the park was completely closed and wrapped in yellow tape. So the idea that that building should have been open and bathrooms be open and whatever, there was an awful lot of pandemic confusion around who was even allowed to go down there, let alone conduct business down there. So I think in the absence of a pandemic, none of that would have happened. So I think we have to view that through the pandemic lens, just like these repayments.
Yeah, those are facts you'd want to take into account before you try to enforce any breach,
Correct?
definitely.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, if we could reach out to both businesses and then maybe give us a little more on that in 2 weeks, see what we can do with those
Yeah,
deferrals.
I would hope we'd have answers from both of them within the next couple of weeks.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't want to see this not open again this coming summer, and that through the pandemic
They're open
funding.
now, aren't they? They're open now.
On Merrill Avenue.
No, they're open
On the
downtown.
riverfront, they opened.
Oh,
on
okay.
April
Yeah.
No,
April
I don't
30th.
go down there.
Oh, no, they're open.
So-
They're open.
But through the pandemic, they had options of other funding to cover their rent and their staffing. So, okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll hold on that as well. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action on a report and a recommendation of CCITC Director Klein on comparing iPads for council members versus laptop usage. You see you've got some numbers in your packets that he had put together, the costs of maintaining and providing laptop equipment and support versus iPads. It's a substantially higher cost to go with a laptop. And, I guess we have not had a lot of issues with the iPads. We've been able to push updates to them. I think they're fairly dependable. We've not had we're on our second genre of iPads and keyboards since we started getting them. And they've been pretty reliable for the amount of portability. I mean, we're all carrying them around everywhere. And I've not heard that anyone has had functional problems with the iPad as far as, downloads or performance. When we first got them, they had a tendency, the Goodreader app had a tendency to crash with big files and maps and things because it was overloaded, but that got fixed with an upgrade, and I don't recall anyone having had problems with its usability, I guess. Deb, go ahead.
Well, I did, because the first thing I wanted to do is find where the plug is to connect it to my 27-inch widescreen monitor. And there is no interface.
Well, are you talking that you need a USB port to plug that in? Because you'd need one of those connections that does lightning to USB.
Well, it's the VGA, or, Jerry, can you explain more about it?
So actually, Wesley and Carol are on.
Oh, Wesley and Carol are on? So Wesley or
Yeah.
Carol, could you address the situation with connecting video out to iPad?
Yeah, to my knowledge, there isn't any connectivity for video out. There's a lightning connector, but it is something that I can research into. I'm not familiar with connecting that type of device to a larger screen due to the fact that it's a tablet, it's not a computer. So it's on the same category as a phone or other mobile devices in that class of,
Okay.
equipment, so.
It just happens, I went over to Happy Mac, and they had said, no, the iPad is not
Can't be done.
designed to have all the different interfaces as a laptop does.
Okay.
Okay.
So beyond that, do we have this on the agenda because we're looking at making a change for the next go-round of equipment? Or how did we get to this place?
Well, maybe I could,
Go ahead, Mike.
yeah, as the chair of the Rules Review Committee, we discussed this at our last meeting because there was, the issue was brought up about using iPads versus council members using their own laptops versus having the city provide laptops to council members. And there was a general consensus of Rules Review that this was not really the selection of one device or the other was not really a rule issue. So it wasn't anything that we could really, make a decision on one way or the other. So we kicked it over to finance because it's certainly, it would be a financial choice for the council if we decided to wanted to go with one platform or another. But we really didn't have any firm, understanding of what the cost is to supply and maintain iPads versus laptops were. So that's why we asked for this, review. And you can see that the costs are substantially different. And I think it's, as a member of the Finance Committee, I would prefer that we kind of stay on this consistent route of maintain, the council members use our pads instead of having the option of a pad or a city-issued laptop.
I agree.
Just because of the cost difference between the two.
Well, and I feel like it's a matter of personal preference anyway, so you're furnished an iPad, but if somebody prefers, we had folks when we first got iPads that preferred not to use them and still preferred to stay with paper packets, and we accommodated that. So, whether someone wants to bring in their own iPad or their own laptop and view it on their screen like they would view it at home to read their packet or whatever through the website, I mean, they certainly can make that choice, but I think the furnished item needs to be an item that's at least cost-effective for us to work with. So, we furnish the iPad, and, if they prefer a paper meeting packet or, to bring their own computer or whatever, I think that's a matter of user preference, but I just can't see the substantial difference in cost when what we have by and large is really working. So, Deb?
Thank you, Lisa. I was going to say, too, as part of it, I've been using personal computers for 30 years. So for me, the iPad is like a toy. And then I have back and neck issues. And so why would I prefer an iPad when I got a 27-inch monitor at home? I also wanted to let you know that I do have a few emails that Leslie and IT worked on with me that were on my home phone that I had felt it needed to be a permanent record for the city. So I did bring my laptop in, and we got that accomplished. But I also wanted to mention, I believe Gary Gisselman used his laptop. He preferred that for himself. And for Dennis Smith, he had given me a printout of the different violations within the district that he decided to put in alphabetical order based on who owns it, as a way to see if there is some problem management companies or landlords with multiple properties. And I was hoping to continue using it, but on my home desktop, I do have Microsoft Office. And so eventually, if I want to set that up, I can go ahead and then download that record as such. For me, there is at times that I would like to send personal letters to homeowners about some questions that they may have, but again, I have Word, and I can also supply that correspondence to inspections. And then I had recently been looking at the 2020 census data, which is, not 2019 is available right now. And they're available on Excel. But again, I do have that available. It is not downloadable as a PDF. And I do think with more looking at the 2020 census information, poverty rate, reduction in residents, and other looking at annual income and that we'll find out more information, but I don't know if anyone on the city side is assigned to do that. So I'm looking to do that on my own, and then I'll be sharing those records later on.
Right, I think that's a matter of personal preference. I mean, if, a lot of that data may be available through the inspections department, they can certainly database search through their software also. But as far as what device we want to do that, the iPad does host a number of apps called Pages and Sheets and Keynote, and all of those do the same things as PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. And when you go to share and export an item from one of those, you can export it in those formats when you email it to other people. So they are friendly with the Microsoft packages, and they can be loaded onto the iPad. In fact, I have them on mine, and they work quite well, actually. Tom, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Tom Neal, Alderperson, District 4. I don't know, I just Googled, how to connect your iPad to a TV or a monitor, and there's a couple of methodologies here, and the second one says connect your iPad if it has a lightning connector, which ours do.
Yes?
It's just one, plug a lightning digital AV adapter or lightning to VGA adapter into the charging port on your iPad. So where you plug it in to charge it up. Connect an HDMI or VGA cable to the adapter, connect the other end to the display, TV, or projector, whatever it is it's going into. And there you go. So it seemingly, it is something that there are adapters available for.
Yeah.
They look pretty simple, so.
They do work pretty slick with smart TVs and stuff too, where they can wirelessly interface.
Yeah,
and
and
that,
there's also the wireless methodologies too, but this is a simple piece of hardware
Sure.
that you just plug in and go.
I see Wesley has a hand up on WebEx. Go ahead, Wesley.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I was just doing some looking, and there is adapters out there. I would have to look and confirm the version of the iPads that you guys have to make sure it is compatible there.
Sure.
The other thing I was gonna comment is there are Word and Excel readers for the iPad to open Word and Excel documents natively on there. You just can't edit them on there without an Office 365 subscription.
Sure. So there's ways to make it work if iPad is not friendly for certain users, but I think that by and large, the item that we want to issue, do we want to continue to have that be iPad, I guess is the question for you guys. Nodding, yes, by consensus? Okay. We don't need to vote on that. I mean, that's not really an actionable item. We don't need to vote because I don't think that we've come to the point of getting new equipment yet. We've only had these a couple years. But if we're all of the mind that we want to continue with iPad, then we would just direct IT accordingly. And, whatever we use also, they try to dovetail that same technology with Marathon County since it's a shared department. And so the idea of this whole laptop availability thing could be a way bigger cost than anyone even imagined if 37 folks down the street decide they want different stuff too. So I think if we stay with iPad, maybe they'll stay with iPad and keep everybody's costs down. So, all right. So with that, we won't vote on that, but we'll communicate to IT that iPad is still the favorite. All right. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action regarding the 2021 debt issuance schedule and plan.
Yeah.
And I'll turn that over to Mary Ann, and then we also have Phil Costin on WebEx with us to join in this conversation.
Yep, and he is here for item 5, too, the investment of the ARP funds.
Excellent.
So, and we talked about this last year, really our debt for debt issuance for 2021 actually starts when we adopt the budget last fall.
Yep.
Our budget contemplated the 2.692 for street and infrastructure projects. And then it also anticipated the demolition of WAS and the start of street improvements related to the mall.
Yep.
In looking at what we will get done this year, we decided to pursue phased borrowing for the WAS project. So this year, we would borrow 1.6 million, and then we would complete the borrowing in 2022. Typically, these issues have spend down requirements, and we weren't quite sure how fast we would be spending down the money.
Well, especially if they aren't ready fast enough.
Right.
Right.
And so, and then the other, I guess, modification that was made through council action in the last month or so was the funding of the $1 million for a fire truck. So the new money that's anticipated this year would be the 2.6 million for streets, the $1 million for the fire truck, and the 1.6 million for the WAS, for a portion of the WAS project. And then we'd like to look at refinancing of some other projects, one of them being the 2018 C taxable note anticipation note, which was $8,010,000 that funded the Wausau chemical deal. That was set up because we were waiting for that new building to be constructed and have full values, so that's helping retire the future debt, as well as for, you know, any other projects to get settled out there. So it had just one principal payment on April 1st of 2023, though it does have some call provisions where we could call it early. Its interest rate right today is 3.45%. So we are looking now to basically refinance that early and put permanent financing in because in looking at the cash flow of the districts, I believe we can step into our permanent financing now and take advantage of the low interest rates. And then the other that we were looking to refinance is in early of 2020, we issued a state trust fund loan for $2.9 million, which was related to tax increment district number 6. It paid for the Riverwalk. It also paid for some of the improvements out on 52 Parkway, I guess you would call that. And so those, we would refinance into not extending the issue at all. It was just a 5-year issue with the state trust fund, but really refinancing it to take advantage of a lower interest rate.
Sure.
And then also we would actually pay down a little bit extra money. So we made a payment of almost $578,000 March of 2021, and we would pay off an additional $550,000 early. So that's what we're planning on refinancing. I'd had a cover letter and just a brief PowerPoint. So I don't know if it'll be really short.
Yep, we can
just
go
to
through
kind of
that.
cover where we are on debt.
While that's loading, the refinance of the note anticipation note really should help when we put permanent financing in there, because that's a riskier financing
Right.
vehicle than permanent financing.
Yes.
Which then should also help our annual score and call that happens with Moody's, right?
Right,
Where
and
you have
lower
less-
our interest costs.
More
Yep.
dependable financing vehicles for,
Do
okay.
you want to page through or should?
I can, that's
Okay,
fine.
perfect. So this just kind of highlighted the types of debt that we've been relying on. I don't really need to say anything specific about that, so if you want to go to the next one. Our most recent ratings from Moody's were a AA3 for both the city general obligation, and that took place in 2020. And then late in 2019, we received a AA3 for both the water and sewer. Today, our debt is what you would call fixed rate debt. So our interest rate gets locked in when we issue the debt, and it's not prone to change. Our current debt structure shows that we have about 87% of it retired in 10 years and 55 in 5 years. So this, again, is just looking at what our new money would be. So our total new money would be $5,292,000. And then with debt issuance costs, we'd be looking at another just about $300,000. So the total new money would be about $5.6 million. And then we would be refinancing, like I said, the taxable $8,010,000, and then the amount that we would need to refinance for the state trust fund would be $1.8 million. And the taxable note right now is at 3.45%, and the state trust fund is at 2.5.
Wow, that's good,
Should go to the next one.
very good.
So just looking at what our historical, and all of this, I'm focusing just on our general obligation debt and what we do for the city, not for the water and sewer.
Right.
If you look at what we have been issuing historically, you can see that this is a big drop in new money borrowing compared to where we had been the last few years. So you can go to the next slide. And of course, that will then cause our outstanding debt to drop. So you can see this is our outstanding debt kind of looking back. So we started out at just over 74 million in 2016, and that rose up to 84 million. And now with, in 2021, we'll be at just a little bit over 76 million. And then if you want to go to the next slide, if we look at how the amortization schedules will affect our outstanding debt going forward. This is every 2 years, you can see that our debt is going to be dropping dramatically. Looking at our existing debt, what we're adding in 2021, and then typically our annual amortization or our annual CIP is about $3 million. So we've got those layers there. But again, just a qualification that this does not have the Public Works facility. It hasn't been approved yet. And,
Right, so if they would decide to move that plan forward, this could raise a little bit on the
Yes.
bottom end, so.
Yes.
Sure.
And then just looking at, well, what are we borrowing money for? Again, excluding the water and sewer utilities. So right now, the sewer and water utility are not taking advantage of any of our general obligation debt. They had been, but they had been paying that off in the last few years. So
And they're
they
doing
no
their
longer-
own borrowing now.
Now they're
Right.
relying totally on revenue borrowing. So if you look at our outstanding debt today, you can see about 70% of our debt is being financed with tax increment, and 31% is for our general capital projects. And then there was just that other chart, you don't have to go back, that kind of showed you which TIDs had the most debt. So again, just a summary of our 2021 issue, about 5.6 million for the 2021 note. Again, just amortized over a straight 10 years. That interest rate would be 1.39%. Now, in that financing would be the refinancing of the state trust fund loan. So that, again, would be amortized over a shorter period of time, and you'll be able to see that when you look at the retirement schedule. But the uses of funds would be that fire truck, the streets, and sidewalks and storm sewer, what was identified in the 2021 budget. Our 2021 bond would be taxable. That they're estimated at a 2.18%, so down from the 3.45%.
Wow.
That's refinancing that Wausau chemical. We're doing it a combination, so TID 11 is out in the business campus, and that's taking half of that issue. TID 12 is in the downtown area, that's taking the other half. So we're financing, and we're looking at each one of these pot of money and the WOW, and we're saying, okay, the TID 11 share is gonna get amortized in 10 years. TID 12, we're using 15 years, and then the WA's 5 years, because we're using that TID 7 increment to fund that, so that could be really short. And then they just combine it into one amortization schedule. So you'll see when we go, I think it's on the next slide, maybe? Yes. So you can see, if we look at the 2021A, you can see that our annual payments are hovering around that 800,000. That's because we're refinancing that state trust fund. And so we've got faster payments for that because TID 6 is getting ready to close. And so it's got increment that it can retire that debt quickly. And then once we get down to that $400,000 level in 2026, then that's just the CIP standing on its own, which would be the streets and that fire truck.
Sure, because the TID cost would be repaid already.
Right.
Okay.
And then if you look at the 2021B, you can see, again, we've got higher payments in the initial years because WA's portion is getting paid up faster as well. Oh, I see, maybe I have a typo too, sorry.
Yeah, there's a mistype, yeah.
Yeah, so that 2028 where it says 77,406 should be probably 777,406, I'm assuming. But
Correct.
you can see that we're paying off large portions of the loan quicker. And then when we get down to those last 5 years, then TID 12 is just making its final payments on that. And the good thing, we still would have some flexibility even though it's set up with this schedule, because typically our bonds have call provisions. So if, for example, we found TID 12 was functioning at a much higher level, we could call the bonds early and
pay them off
retire.
sooner.
Yes.
Okay.
So just to explain that, and then, so then as far as our tentative calendar, summer is always a hard time because we only have our one council meeting a month. And so when Phil and I were going over the calendar, I'd forgotten that. And so really what we had wanted to do was have council, we usually take our debt issuance to council twice. Once just to authorize for us to do the work to prepare for sale day. So, you know, we have to put our official statement together. We need to engage with Moody's, and these, you know, have real costs associated with them. So you want to get approval first, have Moody's give us our rating. So if you approve this tonight, then council would consider it on the 25th. And then we were going to have sale day on June 22nd. But I had forgotten that council doesn't meet the second Tuesday of the month in the summer. So then Phil and I were talking about, well, we could move it to June 8th, which is a little tight of giving us enough time to put these documents together and do a good job selling the bonds. We could move it to July 13th, but then Phil came up with an alternate solution for the committee to consider. And I don't know, Phil, do you want to cover that, or?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to walk through that when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of the approaches, well, first of all, good evening. Nice to be with you. Bill Costin with Elders. So one of the approaches we've been using a great deal over the last number of years is what's called a parameters sale. And the parameter sales could be done for both these issues, the tax exempt 10-year note and the taxable 15-year bond. What it is at your meeting on May 25th, when this will be brought to the council, we would ask the council to authorize the bond sales, but also authorize the parameters to the bond sales, and so to both issues. And in the parameters, what it does is spells out different criteria that need to be met on a specific sale date. And we would pick that sale date. Typically, for a kind of conventional financing, we would pick a normal city council meeting that Mary Ann just went through with you. The nice thing about the parameters, we could hold it on any evening. It doesn't, or any day. It doesn't need to be on a council evening. There's some benefits to this. One is that we could pick a day, and it's really becoming during this time of year, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but nationally in spring and early summer, we see a very heavy sale calendar, meaning a lot of different issuers in the market. And if you think about it, most communities meet on Mondays and Tuesdays. So to kind of alleviate some of that competition when you issue on a competitive basis bonds and notes, we could pick a Wednesday or a Thursday, which isn't as heavy of a sale day. So that's one benefit that we really do see when we hold parameter sales for different communities. We could push them to a Monday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, kind of an off day, if you will, in the bond market. Off day doesn't mean you have less bidders, just you're competing with less issues out in the marketplace. The second is we can establish a parameter sale day, and if the market moves for whatever reason, we have the ability to kind of move the date. We can slide it a day, we can move it a week, we can postpone it for a period of time. So if you have a blip in the market and all of a sudden the interest rate market really trends one way or the other, and we're seeing something significant occur in the market, this gives us more flexibility to kind of move the sale so that we're not selling in a day on a day that maybe the market is interrupted for something. Obviously, we just went through this over the last year with the pandemic. We did have sales last year in March when this all occurred, and some of those had to be postponed, and it became rather cumbersome. So the parameter sale provides you with a little more flexibility on date of when the sales would occur. And then finally, what it allows us also to do is we still go through the exact same process that the city council has seen in the past. We will take bids on a specific date, we'll compile the information, we'll present the information, we'll provide all the same documentation, that you would normally see. It just would not be on a normal council night. So that's, you know, you're really getting the same product. It's just enabling us a little more flexibility to get this done in June and take advantage hopefully of the low interest rates as Mary Ann already talked about. So we're not pushing this all the way out into July.
And the city has done a parameter sale once before.
Was it last year or the
Right.
year before? I think we did.
I feel
and
like
it was-
it's been a couple years ago that we did it.
It actually worked well, because I
Right.
think giving you that flexibility also eliminates having sale day, you know, wrap up late in the afternoon, and then having Phil have to jump in his car and drive here in time for that meeting and to present and whatnot. So, you know, I think if we have a little bit of flexibility where we hit the market on the right day, the chance that we'll get favorable rates is just that much better. But that did work well last time.
Yeah, and my goal would be to come up at your meeting on May 25th to go through this in detail with the full council so that everybody's comfortable with the process.
Right, and then once it's done, we just report out on how it went, right? So
Correct.
what are your thoughts on that, committee? Is that the way you want to go? Go ahead, Michael.
So with the, so just so that I'm clear with this, so with the parameter sale, as long, you know, we set, you know, we set what we want, you know, to achieve, and then as long as the sale goes through and we hits the rates that's within our parameters, we accept the sale, and we don't have to meet as a body then to approve it, to ratify it, is that what?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. You'll establish the parameters in the resolutions that would be adopted on the 25th. In those, we would identify the interest rate cap and a number of other items that would have to be met for you to meet those parameters. And then there's a certifying certificate that gets sent out after everything is compiled that documents that you met all the parameters. That gets signed off by usually a finance director or mayor or somebody showing that you met all of the parameters. And then we still, again, provide all the documentation we normally would on a normal sale.
So we're like pre-approving the sale, and it's just, and if everything goes to plan, we're good to go then, so.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So would you need us to vote tonight on directing you to execute that plan and then set that in motion for a parameter sale?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you should make a recommendation to the council, yes.
Yes, okay. Do you
then-
guys have additional material before we would do that?
Nope, I was just going to add one more thing. You know, when that resolution comes, it's got not a maximum amount that we can borrow. So, you know, like, we can't just go on a spending spree, so to speak,
Right.
and adjust how much we're going to borrow. So, you know, really, as Michael had mentioned, we are really setting the parameters of an acceptable interest rate, where the parameters for an acceptable interest rate, and some of the other components of the issue, but not how much we're going to borrow.
Right,
The
that's
amount
already set,
will be
so-
set in that resolution, yeah.
Okay, so the only variable really is the date and the rate. Deb, go ahead.
Thank you, Lisa. I have a number of questions. I guess first, why aren't we, instead of going to regular annual budgeting, financing and issuing bonds, why aren't we setting up a reserve as part of our annual budget? So we have it out there, what we plan on anticipating for other expenditures and for projects. And with the fire truck for $1 million, we don't know yet, but that could be part of that federal stimulus that we may not have to borrow. I mean, we'll be learning more tomorrow, but I thought the whole emphasis of what Katie had talked about with the Monday or Friday flash, that this is health and safety related. And so we could potentially qualify for that and not have to borrow as much. And then talking about the different rates, I guess when I was in school, way back when, we were talking about bonds that municipalities do, and some that are tax-free versus taxable. And I thought that's still a category out there. So why are we going with one or not looking at you know,
So
the
the-
options of two different types.
So the promissory note that we're borrowing for our street and for the fire truck is tax exempt debt. So, but with the bonds, our bond council basically looks at how how those funds were used, and if it is related to private activity use, which of course, both of these are developer focused,
Yep.
yes. So then the IRS says, we don't want to give you tax exempt because really the private sector is ultimately benefiting from this, so it must be then taxable debt.
Okay, so then TIF is considered taxable?
Right, and it wouldn't, not all TIF would be, because if we were doing a street project in a TIF district,
Right, the
then it would
street
be.
part, the city's street part would be
Yes,
non-taxable.
yep. If I could comment on the fire truck too. So, we have received some preliminary information, and the ARP funds really, they have not expanded it to give us an indication that we would be able to use that for a fire truck. It really is designed for water, sewer, broadband. Now, you know, we are taking possession of 2 fire trucks in the next week. And the cost of those is over $1.2 million. So, you know, we paid about $1.2 million for fire trucks in 2021, and we will again have to pay another $1 million for a fire truck next year. So you could, if you wanted to keep your options open, use this $1 million for the 2 trucks that we're going to take possession of in the next week or so, because they are, I guess, one of the major culprits of that decline in our motor pool reserves that have kind of caused us to initiate this conversation anyhow. And that would then either allow us, when we go to receive the truck next year, pay for it with cash that's in the motor pool, or if you were able to receive a grant through either the Build America, some of these other grant programs that are still in the development stage by the Biden administration, you would be able to then apply for that fire truck that's coming next year. And we would have really dealt with all of our, I guess, financial constraints that we're experiencing right now in the motor pool fund. So I feel like if we borrow for this $1 million for the fire truck today, we're number one, taking advantage of really low rates. Again, we could use it for the trucks that are coming in, that keeps some of those reserves in the motor pool fund, and it gives us flexibility for funding options that might come our way as the ARP is developed.
And if we would still have a gap between federal aid packages that are still in development, any grant that we may receive, and the motor pool, we still then could also add that difference to the 2022 borrowing.
If you wanted
If we
to.
absolutely had
Correct.
to.
Right,
So, because the length of time it takes to build the truck gives us some
yes,
breathing room.
yep.
Okay.
Mary Ann, could I add one final comment
sure.
on that, if that's okay? You know, the portion that has the fire truck, as Mary Ann identified as accurately as its notes, meaning an amortization of 10 years or less, and that's important from the standpoint of how the money can be used. It can be used for any public purpose project, so if grant money becomes available or some type of stimulus money becomes available, those funds could be used for another purpose. Bonds are different, where they are in a silo and they have to be used for the specific purpose you're borrowing the money, like TID 11, TID 12. So there is more flexibility, and the good news is we're able to finance the notes, with notes, the fire truck, to give max flexibility with what those funds could be used for in the future.
Well, I was going to say that we are planning to go to that meeting at John Muir tomorrow to learn more about how those federal funds will be available. But I also agree about if you're looking for a truck in 2022, you might as well see what grants are available out there. And then the grants normally don't don't allow you, okay, I bought something.
Right.
And I want you to have the grant cover it, and that's not the way it goes. But I guess until we know what we know tomorrow, I guess I'm concerned with $1 million for the fire truck. We may have federal money available for that because of the different information that's said about it, but we're not voting, I'm not voting tonight to
I
make a
think
decision.
I think it's
Thank you.
clear, though, that we need to be clear, though, on our expectations of the meeting tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's meeting is a public engagement session, and it's a listening session for us to hear from the community about what matters to them. We're not hearing anything from anybody at the federal level or the state level for what we can do with our money. There's been some directive issued today about how we can do that. So we'll start that meeting. This is us sitting on a stage listening to residents. We're not learning a whole lot. It's more of an opinion type thing, so.
Oh, I was under the impression it was just city and council and county officials
county has-
learning from the feds and
Nope,
the state.
Nope, county has opted not to participate, so this is just us only, our committee, John Muir on the stage, and we've invited the public to ask themselves and talk to us about two questions. Where did our community feel the largest pandemic impact? And what does true economic recovery look like to them? And we're gonna take their thoughts. Obviously, some of their thoughts may be quite a distance afield from where the money can go, but it really is us hearing back from residents, but we're not learning anything from anybody at a higher level than ourselves. So,
Well, when is that planning to be, Bear? Are you going to let us know so we can participate?
I'm sorry, what are you asking? You're asking?
When are we going to be meeting with the state and feds to learn more? And when is that going to be, and can we participate?
So, I mean, I guess I've been attending meetings where we're getting interpretations from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I know that Mary Ann has been attending her, I think, government finance officers meetings. And I've been passing along that information via email to all of you when I get it. So
Well, let me know when the meetings are, and I'll plan on attending, because I guess what I'm seeing of your notes are just referencing a summary that's very brief on a website.
I mean, I
I'm
sent
not
you
seeing
the
your written notes.
the 150-some page document was linked yesterday, so it kind of went into what you could use the money on, according to the Treasury.
I'd like to see your notes of what you put down. Thank you.
okay, so with that, let's shift gears back to the 2021 debt issuance, because we are going to be running out of time in 20 minutes, and we have half an agenda to go. So with that, Mary Ann or Phil, did you have anything else to present about the 2021 debt?
No.
Okay. So with that, do we have a motion from the Finance Committee to recommend to council that they approve a parameter sale at their next meeting at the end of May? Motion from Herbst, is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion? Hearing none. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we'll let the record show that that item has passed 4-1. So that'll take care of the debt issuance. We'll hear from them at council, obviously, on the 25th. Item number 5 is discussion and possible action regarding the investment of American Rescue Plan funds.
Yep. So, I think to the points that we've discussed about the American Recovery Plan, the federal government is still putting together the parameters on this, this program. They certainly have laid out initially how government entities are going to use their share. And as we said, it's to help, we had outlined some of those, replacing lost revenues, dealing with pandemic, investing in water, sewer, and broadband, and helping those who have been hit by the pandemic. And that we have until the end of 2024. We've gotten a lot of advice that you want to give some time to see what other programs will be developed so that you can use and receive and maximize your revenues. So if there's a specific pot of money for one thing, you tap into that pot of money for certain items and use this for other things. And so we will be receiving our first allocation of funds. And so I had talked to Ellers, typically, as I said in my memo, the city is a passive investor. We ladder our investments. When they mature, we reinvest them. We're not accustomed to buying and selling investments because we run short of cash. And we're not accustomed to dealing with, some of the more flexible investment instruments. And so I had thought that since Ellers is our financial advisor and that they may actually help us in deciding how we use our funds, because we might say to them, okay, what's the financial impact if we, use some of the funds, let's say, to borrow less money on our existing water and sewer facilities that we have going on versus using it for something else that they may be helping us. And so to minimize the number of cooks in the kitchen, and because we have this reputation with a reputable financial advisor, I thought maybe it would be good to have them help us with our investments for these ARP funds. So that is what is on the agenda, and they had crafted engagement letter to accompany that.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for Mary Ann on that at all? And we have, Phil with us for that item as well. Did you have anything on that item, Phil, other than taking questions?
No, just questions. I think it's really twofold. It's one, making sure that you have the investments be liquid enough to meet your needs. That'll be, dealt with as you determine where's the most bang for your buck with the money, what's appropriate to spend, where to spend the funds. The league had a good session today. We just put out some guidance on it as well today, later today. But then also, we want to make sure that there's cash flow available at all time to make sure that you can meet the needs. We've already started some dialogue with staff in regards to some of the projects that are ongoing and potential in the future to just analyze impact of some of those. So it'll all play together as part of when the funds will be needed.
Okay. With that, so at this point, the only action you're looking for from us is to approve the engagement letter.
Yes.
I think that one of the best things, we obviously, this is a one-time fund source, and we want to make smart decisions with it. I think that, sometimes when, word gets out that you're getting $15+ million, that, of course, everyone wants it for something. And there's probably 6 project ideas that people have out there for what we should do with that money. But I think that it makes sense for us to walk through that use of that money with our financial planners who help us in other areas of our financing. So I certainly support that. Deb, you had a question?
I get the packet, since I'm not a fan of the iPad, and I didn't have an engagement letter as part of it. And then I guess I'd like more details from Mary Ann about the different software packages that we're getting. So maybe you can just email that about, for each of the areas, especially in the financial software, but the budgeting, special assessment, and that you're talking about.
On the ARP?
That's listed on the,
Oh, in my memo, I indicated that really one of the advantages of having Ellers do this is that it's almost like having additional staff, right? Because this is, these are additional funds, so it becomes additional responsibility for the department to invest the funds. We have been short-staffed. We lost 2 accountants this year, so we've short-staffed already. We have been working on implementation of our community development loan software. We are looking in the very near future, this summer, we're going to be implementing municipal court software, as well as we have to transition off our special assessment software. So this was just another justification that I was making, is our staff is already going to be very thin as far as workload. And of course, we're implementing the priority-based budgeting this
Right.
summer too. And so it would be helpful to the department, and we're going to have the responsibilities of the other components, the reporting components of ARP, to have a partner in Ellers and to take on this investment burden for us.
The other
too.
thing I think that helps us is that Ellers does this with communities everywhere. And so that insight of them being able to work with other municipalities and make those recommendations for what others have done, and, not leave that decision internally for, just us to figure it out as we go. I think that just to have their insight as to what they've seen in the market and what they've seen work for other people, that's of tremendous value
Yes.
to us, because you don't need to spend time on your listserv asking other finance directors what they did.
Right.
They can do that all for you, so.
Yeah, and Phil, can you provide sort of a level of the amount of investing that you're doing for other communities? It's grown.
Yeah, we started this, the investment side of our business probably about 15 years ago, really out of fulfilling a need that we heard from our municipal clients. And many of them, when they got bond proceeds, they're like, what do we do with the money? And the LGIP, local government investment pool, is certainly an option, paying next to nothing. Wisconsin is very conservative with where you can invest the funds. Most communities have an investment policy that even restricts it greater. So we're not going to get crazy with how the money gets invested. It's going to be within your policy. But we have grown our business to about 1.6 billion, and it's all municipalities that have kind of turned to us to be able to help them, one, maximize the investment they can get, but make sure it's secure and liquid enough to meet your cash flow needs. And I think the goal here was just to kind of help build off of the staff work that you've done already and take care of some of the burden of these additional funds that will be coming in.
Sure. Okay. So with that, is there a motion from the committee to approve the engagement letter between the city and Ellers to help manage this process? Motion by Herbst. Is there a second? Second by Watson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we'll record one opposed, so that item passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is discussion regarding implementation of a garbage and recycling special charge. Mary Ann has that item.
And just really wanted to circle back, after our last meeting, we were really talking about a twofold discussion. One is, should the ordinance be repealed? That says that we need to go to referendum before we implement a new charge. So that is a standalone discussion. You made a motion to forward that on to Common Council for consideration. The other was a second conversation, which is what are some of the charges? One of them being refuse and recycling, another one being stormwater. And so, this was just to carry on the conversation about moving garbage off of the tax rate and on to a separate charge. And so, I was just giving you food for thought, I guess, of, well, what are some of the things that we'll have to discuss as we proceed, or if you wanted to proceed, what is all going to be included? Do you want, obviously, curbside refuse and recycling? Do you want to include, for example, yard waste operations? Would you want to include large item drop-off? Those would be things, because the more services we would include, we would need to, change what that annual rate is. And then, as Deb had pointed out earlier, and she had made this comment at the last meeting, and we actually, when we went with the containers, we did get homeowners call and go, I don't want a container. I'm going to just use my neighbor's container. And so I had reached out to a number of communities, Weston, Rib Mountain, I think Croninwetter, and most communities require their residents to get garbage service. It's not an optional service because, number one, the administrative responsibilities grow. Two, if you have people who are choosing not to have garbage service because of them being, cost sensitive, you can have some problems in your neighborhoods with garbages accumulating. And so most communities do require them to participate in the program. You can't opt out like Deb was mentioning. And we did require our homes get the containers. And we did say to them, you don't have to put them out at the curb every week. If you want to only put it out every other week or whatever, you can do that, but you have to take a container. So that would be another, as Deb was pointing out, she would like to talk about that, so that would be another thing that you would want to talk about.
Mary Ann, excuse me, I was just going to mention, what about those homes that may be owned by investors that are empty for years? Would they be able to opt out?
Again, we can do additional research. These are things that we're going to have to research and resolve. But like I said, communities that I talked to today that are doing this as a separate charge are requiring their, if there is a improvement on that lot that's residential,
It has
they
to
have to
contain-
have a cart.
I think that makes sense, because at some point, garbage, whether it takes 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks to fill it, at some point, people have garbage that needs to get out, and there needs to be a way to get it out. And if they can't put out their own combination of odd duct containers like we had before, obviously, then the cart makes sense. So, that said, though, I think that, this memo is telling, because like you said, you indicated that if we were to, now, being clear, the vote tonight at council to repeal the referendum requirement does not approve this at all. This is a
Correct.
totally separate conversation for
Yes.
us. But, I mean, just look at the fact that if we were to level the playing field for every taxpayer in town with regard to what they pay for trash service, the mill rate goes down 48 cents. I mean, imagine giving every taxpayer in town a 48-cent mill rate reduction. That goes over pretty well. And, right now, what we have is this systematic unfairness with the way people pay for garbage based on the value of their home. So they all put out the same container today, but one house could pay $900 a year to put out that same container, and another house could pay $17 to put out the same container, whether they generate the same amount of trash or not. And so, that is one of the things, when it was this hodgepodge of different containers, it was harder to legitimize a uniform charge, but right now, everybody's got the same container for the same service. So that's where fairness makes sense. So I'm glad that you put that in there, because I think that's exactly what we were asking for, last time to talk about. So, Sarah?
Can I just get maybe a number of percentages of homes in Wausau City that would have to pay more? So like, I know that was just, I think that's an awesome stat to have.
Sure, I'll get that for you.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll figure out what the break point was, and so then you'll know that any house valued above a certain point is paying more or less.
I do have that, 194,000 is the break-even point.
Okay?
But I don't know how many houses are below and how many houses are above
Okay.
that. So I can
So we can
get
figure that?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry, I should have done that.
Good, good. So,
So really, again, you don't have to make any
right, and we
decision
certainly
on
won't
this.
make
It's really-
adjustments to the plan today. I mean, this contract is nowhere near ready to renew anyway. We just have to figure out what to do with the money part. I think it's a 10-year arrangement. So, Deb?
I guess I just wanted to try to clarify, I thought when we were talking in past years about the referendum, that a lot of the taxes that, more expensive homes or for homes in general, we're paying real estate taxes that covers, fire department, EMS, regular city services. And so no matter what your house size and that, there's still those costs. And that if you have a larger home or whatever, and there was a fire, there might be more involved, or if you have more woods, potential fire and affecting maybe other neighbors as such. So I thought we had different discussion when we talked about the referendum a number of years ago. And I just didn't think it was just about the refuge and the recycling.
Well, it was about a number of things that impact our mill rate that other municipalities that we get compared to don't have included in their mill rate. And that's why sometimes we look so high. And so when you go out and talk to a realtor and they tell you, well, if they had to sell a house in this municipality versus ours, oh, it's so difficult because Wausau's taxes are so high. But very few people drill down into what actually goes into that package of the bill. And so if you were to compare those, they actually are kind of like apples and oranges sometimes. So So we don't need to act on this tonight, obviously, right? So you're gonna gather some info about which houses are which. And we certainly don't need to act on it, but this is kind of an FYI thing for us because we asked for it last time. I don't want to delay the start of the council meeting for too long because it's coming up here in 6 minutes. But I see a couple of things that we should talk about that are time sensitive. The first one, I'm gonna hold item number 7. Partly because the city attorney had asked for a little bit of time to look at our fee structure for animal licensing, and if there's any change to be made. She had some ideas on that, but she was not ready today anyway. So we can certainly hold up on number 7 for our next meeting, which comes up on the 25th. Item number 8, discussion and possible action on Metro Ride funding request for a budget modification. And you'll see that that's in the packets as well. Greg, did you want to walk us through that request? I mean, it looks like they're looking to shift some money from the service truck to the supervisor van.
We have some unspent operating assistance funds from 2020.
Yep.
And so we've advanced a couple capital projects, the service truck and the supervisor van. So we would use 80% federal funding to cover the cost. And so I'm looking for that local share of 20% from the city. And then the third project is a transportation development program, which is our 5-year plan. The Transit Commission would like to move that up a year to deal with some of the gaps we have in service currently and to improve our overall program.
Okay.
And so those are the projects. And so the total funding request I'm asking for is $46,446.
Okay. And that's just a shift within your budget of money that's already there, right? Not new money, so.
Yeah, because we were so under budget and we got CARES funds, we've reduced the city's commitment to the 2020 budget from about 1.3 million to about 146,000. So we have a hefty reserve fund at this point.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve that transfer for Metro Ride? Motion by Watson, is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that item carries. Item 9 is discussion of possible action regarding a budget modification in the fire department budget. You've got some information on that in your packets as well. And let me just get my iPad to catch up here.
Yep, basically they're asking, because they have been selling some of their excess
Old
from-
equipment, right?
Right, from closing down the old facility, and they're asking if they could use those proceeds
For new
for other
equipment.
capital replacement.
So, right, they've been selling some stuff online, old equipment that they've taken out of service, and they would like to use the funds that they created with that to buy new stuff of similar type. Questions on that at all? Okay? You have a motion to approve? Motion to approve from Ryan, is there a second? Second from Herbst. Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. We'll hold item 10 for our next meeting also, because it doesn't require immediate action, and the addendum also was pertaining to pet license fees.
Yeah.
So we'll take that on the 25th also. So we are just flat out of time. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Watson, is there a second? Second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We'll stand adjourned, and then common council will start in this chamber in just a couple minutes. Thanks for everybody.